everybody. As Wes so aptly said, my name is PJ. I work for Engineer. I'm here to talk about Ruby groups. So let's establish a few things real quick. How many of you attend your local Ruby group meeting? More importantly, how many of you help organize in any small way your local? Stand up. If you help organize, stand up real quick. All right, everybody give these people a round of applause. Because I think a lot of people don't understand what goes into a Ruby group and what it really involves. So I'm here to talk about that a little bit. So what's in a Ruby group? There's literally hundreds of thousands of bazillions of Ruby groups worldwide. They all kind of have different focus. Some of them are just hacker groups that sit around and they do some Ruby and they have some fun. They do katas and whatever. Do toy projects. Others, get together and they have talks regularly, or they have game nights and they're more social. But the groups, they don't really act as a group outside of the insular little group that's inside of them. It's, it's a bunch of folks getting together, doing some Ruby and having fun. And it's fun because it's easy. And a lot of the groups are going to stay at that really easy insular stage. And that's kind of counterintuitive to what a Ruby group is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a way to take the language we're all learning and enjoy it and kind of spread the word. And I don't want to make it sound like we should proselytize. We shouldn't go out and convert everyone to use Ruby all the time. That's not what it's about. But if you just stay insular, eventually everyone, not everyone, but people will start to leave. So what if we started to break out of these little shells and out of our little local Ruby group and started to look into other parts of the community? Well, it's hard to do that. So the first thing we have to do is take baby steps. The first steps are always the hardest. But once you start taking those baby steps, it's like a snowball rolling downhill. And I'm from Buffalo, so I really know about snowballs rolling downhill all the time. But you pick up momentum. And once you pick up momentum, you can start to see exactly how far you can go with your group. The first thing to do is find everyone in the group and try to give everyone a job. Don't let that one person or those couple of people do all the work. Don't let them, they're tweeting everything, they're organizing everything, they're sending the emails out, they're writing the blog posts, and and 9 times out of 10, they're speaking at least every other presentation, every other month. That's no good. Spot some people who, maybe they want to give a talk, maybe they don't. But find out if someone wants to do something to participate. Have someone write a blog post. Have them write a review of what they thought of what happened at the last Ruby group. And start with the people who seem the most motivated. It's not hard to take these baby steps from the outside perspective of, oh, I'm this one person, and I can totally step up and do something. But it is hard to go out and ask people actively. So try to be active and get involved. You want to start using social media. A lot of Ruby groups, shockingly, don't do this. I've looked at it, I've actually gone and given this presentation to a few Ruby groups who wanted me to help fix them because they did have like 5 or 6 members that just kept showing up, and it was like, eventually got to the point where it was like, we'll get a few beers, we'll put Iron Man and project it on the screen, we'll watch that because we don't really have anything to say to each other anymore, guys. And it's sad. And I take a lot of these perspectives from the Western New York Ruby group, who is made up of some really killer individuals. We have, Wayne Segman, who started RVM, and believe me, we saw that presentation many times over and over. And we realized that we're not really meeting, we're just kind of hanging out, and that gets rougher and rougher. So how do we get more people interested? Well, we set up a little meetup.com/Western New York Ruby site. We found out there were apparently more Rubyists than the 6 of us, which was cool. We started tweeting. At first, strictly like, next Tuesday night will be the Ruby meetup. And then we'd all retweet it and we'd be like, yes, we're so awesome. But, surprisingly, people were like, hey, I've never seen this before. Could you add a hashtag for Western New York Ruby in case we miss this? We'll follow the hashtag. We'll have that on our tweet deck or whatever. And we'll be able to see whatever comes up. Yeah, okay, cool. That's easy to do. We started a Facebook group. This is, Facebook. A couple years ago when we did the Facebook group, it was really active, and people were like commenting on things like, oh, great presentation the other day. I took a picture of you. Awesome. And as people are using Facebook less and less, it seems, that's not as big of a deal, but we have our blog for you that. And you should always have a blog. Whether that blog is kind of an overview of what's coming up next month or a review of what happened this month, someone should be keeping that up to date. And that goes back to diversifying, giving people their own jobs, their own responsibilities. If you have someone different writing every time, it's not so bad. But there's an important thing to remember. There's a human factor here. You can't just talk all Ruby all the time. You have to remember that people are things outside of being programmers, outside of being devs, outside of being sysops. For example, I have kids, which when I first started in the Ruby community, I was like that guy who had kids and was married. It's like, whoa, that guy totally lives a normal life. No, I don't. But I mean, it's important to keep that in mind. People have time concerns. You know, everyone has a job for the most part that they have to keep hours for. They have a family that they want to spend time with. So don't put too much pressure on any particular group of people. And remember, they do things that aren't just Ruby. So then we get to the community. And a lot of people are going to think this is blasphemy. But think about doing joint meetups. The reason why it's a big thing to do joint meetups is because sometimes people don't get us as the Ruby community. Like, they think we are just goofballs who really love Ruby, and none of us has ever written an application that has any practical application in the real world. And you know, it's cool that you have this hobby. You guys are so cute. That's great. So we started by inviting the local PHP group, which little did they know we had more members than they did. And at the time, we actually had Steve come up and do a talk, and it was interesting because Steve did talk about testing, which is a really cool feature of the Ruby community. And Nick Quaranto, who's one of our group members, also did a talk about testing. And the first PHP guy stepped up to the podium and told you exactly why PHP was better than Ruby. And he started with, you know, Ruby's great because when you get started in Ruby, you go to Google and you say, get started in Ruby, and you have 5 great resources, the 5 top Google hits. And if you say, get started in PHP, you get 5 pages of pornography, apparently. His other point was the fact that if you do Ruby, you can't get a job, at which point several of our members raised their hand and said, we're hiring. If you want to learn Ruby, we're willing to hire you on as an intern and get started that way. We will teach you. Show us what you got. So it kind of backfired. But at the end of the night, we ended up having a really cool conversation that became language agnostic. Like, we weren't Rubyists and PHPs. We were developers. We're talking about solving problems. And that's really what all of us do, and it's really what it's about. So consider looking at other technology groups and asking them to come join you. Drive to nearby groups. We've had people drive to Erie RB, Pittsburgh RB. I've gone up to Toronto RB, which is cool, but difficult unless you really hit the border at the right time. And it's just really cool to see what other Ruby groups are doing, get ideas to bring back to your Ruby group, and then spread it around. Also, send your group members to regional conferences. Probably at least a few of you are here because your Ruby group helped to promote this and give you the idea that it would be cool to come here. I actually, you know, because my Ruby group went to Steel City, met Wes, and Wes invited me to come speak here, and I was like, awesome. And that just kind of shows how that little local Ruby group is now getting a little more global. There's a few things to avoid with all the happy, fun, user group, huggy, feely rainbow time. Don't exclude anyone. This is a key. It doesn't matter if you're young, you're old, you're a noob, you're a graybeard, you're a student, you're a trained professional who's been doing this for years, you're a woman, you're a man, you're a programmer, you're a no-grammer. None of it matters. None of it matters at all. Everyone should be allowed in the group. I mean, we've actually stretched it to the point where we actually have a person who checks IDs for all the students who come in because we're now inviting high school students who are interested in programming and have no experience whatsoever. And the key to that is if you have people that are coming in that aren't experts and have no experience, you can't have all talks by people, you know, not to bring them up again, but Wayne giving a talk about RVM to someone who's never experienced Ruby before, they have no idea what's going on. It's scary. So you try to balance it with, like, you know, a really expert talk like Wayne with someone who's doing, like, here's how to do a blog in 15 minutes. And, you know, yes, it's a presentation that's been done and it's been recycled so many times, but it gives someone who's new a chance to get that hello world feeling. I mean, how many of us remember our first hello world program, Ruby or otherwise? What a great feeling that is. And if you have someone who's there, who's brand new, and you've just taught them that, oh, it's so good. It's so good. And the key is don't be a jerk. This is sometimes difficult, but we try. There's some things you could also do to keep the local group on the super groovy level. Invite students. Always invite students because they're here to replace us. We are not going to do this forever. We are not going to be the best of the best for the rest of our lives. We have to train someone else to do it, or else we'll get the really shitty people that we don't want to do it. So let's train the students who are really interested and motivated to do it. Get experienced programmers from other disciplines. They can come in and give high-level talks on whatever, design, different programming techniques, different path, lean, agile, like all kinds of things that doesn't necessarily mean strictly Ruby, but still is Ruby related and interesting to the people. And you always want to get fresh perspectives. If you just have the same 5 or 6 people coming and talking again and again, having no problem whatsoever saying exactly what they said 3.5 months ago, no one's ever going to really think there's any other point of view to that. You have to get another perspective. Have 2 people present on the same thing on the same night, just to see what the difference is. See what they're going to say that, maybe next to each other, you see, oh, there's 2 sides to this problem. Consider having language agnostic talks. People aren't always cool with this. They're like, well, no, we are a Ruby group. We should talk about Ruby all the time. But we've actually had a lot of success having people come and talk about Postgres, which, yes, Ruby related, not technically a language, not actually programming, but still an important part and a piece to what we do. We have a lot of people that talk about programming as a craft, and not just making it strictly here's my code. I'm going to show you code, and this is what it looks like, and you should code like me, and it's awesome. It's more about saying I am a craftsperson. I make something. I use this language to make something that other people enjoy or find useful, or post funny pictures on, whatever. And you want to keep talks all at a level that everyone can understand. The deeper you get into it, and the more you skip using slides and start using live coding, which is not always the best idea, I'll just put it that way, the more likely you are to start losing your audience and not be able to actually translate why this is such a great thing. But keep in mind, there's always this guy. I actually gave a quick talk at this conference side thing that they had in Buffalo called Infotech Niagara, where every meetup group got to go and talk about their meetup group and why it was awesome. And everybody was really supportive of each other. And I gave another talk, Western New York Ruby, this is what we do, Tuesdays, blah, blah, blah. And guy raised, I said, any questions? The guy raises his hand in the back and he goes, why the hell would you use Ruby? And I was like, listen, I get 5 minutes, I've used 4.5 of them, but I'm totally willing to talk to you about this, not only tonight, but why don't you come to our next meetup? And he did. And he was like, okay, well now I get why you use Ruby, because it's a lot more powerful, even though everyone tells me that it doesn't work as well as Microsoft. We'll get into that in a whole other conference. So technology being what it is, it's easy to start reaching out. But you have to get through a few mental ethics kind of things first. Like, why would I bother reaching out? Ruby's an open source language. And while we all talk about open source, I don't know if everybody in their mind knows exactly what that means, but it means that anyone should be able to contribute. Everyone should be able to give back. A lot of people just think it's like, oh, cool, I can use it for free. No. You have to give back in some way. It doesn't mean you're contributing to every project you've ever seen, but at the same time, you have to give something back. So in the sense of Ruby groups, the way to give back is to start reaching out and start moving into a less local direction. So how do we act locally? One of the things that we started doing was cross-group projects. We'd come up with a project idea. We'd then send it to our little sister group in Rochester, Rochester RB. They would hack on it on their night, because they were like on Thursdays and we were on Tuesdays. So we'd come back on Tuesday and say, oh, well, this is really cool. This is what they did. Now we're going to put this in. And it would go back and forth. And we came out, I mean, it was mostly toys. We didn't make anything really serious, but we recreated Facebook. But it was really cool, and it was a good way to reach out, work with a different Ruby group, and get some fresh perspectives. We're working on regional social meetups, which is, we live in an area, Buffalo's like in the armpit of Lake Erie, which means that we're really close to Rochester, Erie, Toronto, Pittsburgh, Cleveland. None of these things are very far away. What is far away, for those of you who don't know New York that well as a state, is New York City. We don't actually, they're too far away to actually have like a convenient meetup. But we're working on getting a bunch of people together, just have like one regional meetup where it's like, it's not just us, it's everybody, and we all have a good time, and I'll buy the beer, and it'll be fun. And it's cool because, again, you get to see what other people are doing, you get to see what works in their Ruby group, what doesn't work, and you get to exchange ideas. We like to bring in guest speakers. We've had speakers from Pittsburgh, Cleveland. We're working on some speakers. We actually, one of the coolest things we did, technology being what it is we arranged to have a speaker who was in the EU present, and then we played back that presentation, and then we arranged so that the questions could be put up to GitHub, and it was really cool. It was a really neat idea to do it, which brings to web broadcasts. Why keep it secret? I mean, we're not the FBI. We're not creating any kind of seriously sensitive stuff. So let's do web broadcasts. Let's put it on a Google Hangout. Let's do something like that. It's a lot of fun. We actually got this idea from Boston RB because not being in the area, Boston RB has a really big Ruby group. Like, they're kind of huge. And they get a lot of people, and it's like standing room only, and there's a waiting list, and if you don't get on it, you're probably not going that night. So what they've done is they started using Google Hangout to let everybody see what they're doing, let everyone see what presenters they have, and they're very rapid fire. They have like 4 or 5 presenters every meetup. And it's really fantastic. And that way, they can interact. All the people can choose to join the Hangout and see what's going on. So it's really global way to get everyone to Boston. Not physically, but close enough. Out of some of the things we do, we came up with the idea of, well, I shouldn't say we. Nick Quaranto came up with the idea for OpenHack. And this is actually a conversation that took place after one of our Ruby meetups. He and another one of the guys said, it'd be really cool if we could have like a hack night. But I know that everybody here is like, Tuesday nights is their main night, and we don't want to take away from the Ruby group. So what can we do? And he said, well, we'll do a thing called OpenHack, and anybody's welcome to come. Well, how do we get everybody to come? Okay, language agnostic. We don't care what your language is. We don't care what you're bringing. The idea is you come to the table with an idea, and we talk about the best way to solve that problem or make that idea happen. So that started as a little thing, 3 or 4 people showing up, and now there's open hacks around the world. And they're all working, contributing to the same GitHub repositories, and working together, seemingly throughout every month. There's people working on open hack projects, and some of them are really cool. I know that a friend of mine who runs Open Hack Austin did a really cool Instagram iteration where if you tagged your Instagram picture with Open Hack Austin, it would then print out on their printer right there in the office, which was really neat. And then I met up with him, and he gave me all the pictures I printed out, which were like, here's my hand, and we're testing this out. This is my shoe. But it was still really neat that all these people in Austin were now seeing pictures that I was printing so that they could see what I was doing in Buffalo. And I was like, this is really cool. The other thing, and I'm not going to lie, we stole this idea from Pittsburgh RB. We made our own conference that we're working on in the fall, in September 20th and 21st. You should all go. That's just going to showcase Ruby and what we do in our city. So I think it's really cool. And it's a lot like this conference here, but it's our first time doing it. It's totally similar to this, driven by our Ruby group. And it's really neat, so it's a good way to get people to come to your town and see what you're up to. Other ways to act globally. Free training. Offer to go out in the community and do, as Ash was saying, Rails Girls, Rails Bridge. We are working on organizing some stuff with the local Girl Scout troop because they have an web development badge now that they can earn, which is super cool. So we were like, well, this is a perfect opportunity to take kids Ruby, combine that with, a Girl Scout wanting to earn a badge, and maybe we could get some cookies out of this if there's a possibility. But getting the kids involved, getting the community involved, stepping out and saying, hey, it's not just a bunch of us shut up in this room talking about Ruby because we're super geeks and that's what we like. We're trying to train people to come and replace us someday, which is awesome. And one of the big things that came out of that is a lot of the students who had started coming to our meetings really wanted to get people even younger than them interested in doing what they were doing. Because they even see that if we don't perpetuate this, if we don't keep that momentum, everything kind of falls apart. Sponsors. Being from Engineering, this is an interesting topic. When I first started at Engineering, I went to our marketing team and I said to them, listen, my Ruby group sucks. It's 5 people. We eat popcorn and watch movies, and we don't code, and we don't do anything. We don't even talk anymore. But we hug. because, you know, it's cool. But how can I make it better? And they looked at me and they said, who buys the beer? I was like, oh, no. We're on a university campus, and for SUNY, the University of New York, you can't have beer on campus. And the marketing person looked at me and said, I want you to go find a bar with Wi-Fi. I want you to find one, and I want you to have a Ruby event, and here's a check. And I was like, super awesome. So I did. I found a bar with Wi-Fi, and we talked about it. You know, we had some conversations, and I said, listen, guys, I'm going to plan this, because I wasn't organizing the Ruby group at the time. I was like, I'm going to plan this. Like, oh, okay. And it actually worked out really successfully. We had a social event instead of a coding event. There were no talks. It was all about, you know, who would be interested in coming to our Ruby group. We're reigniting, we're restarting, we're rebooting. And are there people in Western New York who are interested? So here's, you know, the 5 of us, of course, showed up a half hour early because we're like, we might meet new people. We better, you know, wash ourselves. And we were amazed because 35 people showed up. We didn't know there were that many Ruby developers in Buffalo because they were all, you know, working on little side projects for such and such a corporation or doing little things out of their home and not really doing Ruby. So sponsorship helped us to launch and get our feet under us. Now we're averaging between like 25, 35, 40 people every time we have a meetup. We have all kinds of people volunteering to speak and talk about, you know, here's my experience. You know, I've only been doing Ruby for 6 months. Here's what I've learned so far. That's an awesome talk to have. That's like the best. And other people who are like, you know, oh, I've been doing this for 4 years and I just discovered this one new thing and I want to talk about it. Awesome. And without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to perpetuate that. And Engineer isn't our only sponsor. We have people that like to come and, you know, they buy a pizza. They send us t-shirts. They send us pens, whatever. And, you know, that helps get people to your Ruby group. And generally, they're going to tweet about the fact that they just sponsored your Ruby group. So you're getting more and more coverage. You're seeing more and more people coming up because maybe they didn't know about you, but they do follow Chargeify. So more power to them. The key with sponsorships is you have to be a little bit careful because certain people, when you ask them for a sponsorship, are going to ask if they can have someone speak or give some sort of salesy presentation. I don't know about you guys, but we try to keep that to a minimum. Most of us are not the purchasing agents of our company and or independent contractors making enough money to say, yes, I will sign up for your $5,000 a month product. Absolutely. So it's not really the appropriate venue. So we try to keep sponsors that want to sell us things to a minimum. And if you're really that pushy about it, then we really don't want your t-shirts or your beer money. We'll get our own. The key to all this is to keep moving forward. A friend of mine, David Collier, who's a data scientist, points out that when people from the US, sorry, Steve, give presentations, and he's from Ireland, he said, you guys, you love quotes, you love them so much. You put them in every presentation. So I'm going to take his quote and say, this is how you improve things and keep moving forward. The key to success is success. The more often you win, the more often you're going to want to win more. The more you do for your Ruby group, the more they're going to want to give back to you. And the more you're going to end up giving back to the community and giving back to the entire community, not just what's immediately around you. So that said, that's my talk. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm @Asplenic. If you want to hear that story, Wes can tell you. And thank you very much.